Good evening.
Good evening. Okay. Where's the camera anyway? Is it over here?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there, by the black.
Oh, okay. So,
Okay. Yeah, ready to go?
yep. There's usually a couple of them that come. They're all doing it from home.
Okay. Oh, city, right?
No, this is the planning commission. Luke, Steve, Andre. Planning commission.
Oh, this wrong.
So I work for the city.
Oh, okay.
And Emily is the community development director, and senior planner. In back in IT.
Okay.
That everyone else on the call is planning commission.
And those are.
I think, yeah, or they're appointed.
Okay.
Yeah, but they don't get paid for it.
Okay.
I think city council does get a stipend. But I don't know. I'm new here, so.
You used to get a really nice parking spot, though.
Oh, okay, that's good. You're overhearing everything I'm saying.
So good evening, everybody. So it looks like there's an empty council chambers there.
Yes, there is. I guess I don't need to stand here, but
Okay.
Yeah, I thought there was a committee meeting that was gonna end shortly. It must have been all online.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Emily, you're on?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay. And Jason said he'd be a little bit late. Is that true, or is he calling in?
Jason's sick today.
What's that?
Jason is sick today.
Okay,
Very late.
so then let's go ahead and plunge forward then. So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:44 or 7:34 p.m. on October 17th. And I'll start with the roll call. Vice Chair Tessman. Present. And I know that Commissioner Aliff is got an excused absence. Commissioner Goodman.
Present.
Commissioner Lambert. See him absent at this point. Commissioner Mather left me a message that he would be late. And then Commissioner Smith.
Here.
And then there's myself, Chair Marusiak, who is present. So can I move that we approve the October 17th agenda as written. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. And the first agenda item is approval of minutes dated October 3rd, but I didn't see any October 3rd, 2022 minutes. I don't know if Emily or Jason, you wish to comment on that.
I'm sorry, guys. I just jumped on. Can you repeat the question?
We just got past the roll call, and the next agenda item is approval of the minutes dated October 3rd, and I didn't see them in the package.
Okay, my apologies. That was an oversight. They are available, so if you give me 1 second, I can show them on the screen here, or if you'd like, we could simply defer that to the following meeting.
I think they're relatively short. If you just show it, that'd be good.
Okay, give me 1 moment. My apologies for that.
Of course.
Let me see if I can find them, of course, the next question. Okay, I'm gonna have to apologize. I am having trouble locating them, so perhaps it would be best if we could just defer this to the next meeting. My apologies for that.
So we will
Fair
defer
enough.
approval of the minutes dated October 3rd until the next meeting. And I see that Commissioner Lambert has joined us.
Yep, sorry guys, my computer decided to update itself when I went to log on.
Yeah, I gotta hate it when that happens. And then I see we have Councilmember Johnson. So I don't, no, let me just ask, is there a council update before we get into the DRB?
Sorry to crowd out your space here. I'll be brief tonight. So there were 2 items that I want to inform the Planning Commission of. The first was that the city has hired a mental health professional to help out the police department and the other safety needs of the city. And this mental health professional, Stephanie Butler, has already begun and is kind of doing a few little things, making sure that she's all ready to go, and will be assisting with all sorts of calls that have to do with mental health. I think she's already been on a few calls at this point. So we're really happy to have Stephanie with us. The funding for that position is coming primarily from the state when they passed a bill to do a pilot program. I believe it was last year. So we're really happy to have Stephanie Butler helping us in those particular needs. We also appointed Councilmember Rob Watton to be the affordable housing liaison to a wider Snoqualmie Valley effort to try to address our affordable housing needs. That is in lieu of a possible council commission or committee that we've considered forming. We decided that maybe it was a little bit premature to form a full committee at this point because this affordable housing consortium of the various cities, I believe it includes Snoqualmie, North Bend, I believe Carnation, and maybe all the way up to Duval. I'm not sure exactly which cities they are, but at any rate, they're going to do some work coming up with hopefully some specific proposals that the Valley can institute. Councilmember Watton will report back to council periodically with regard to what it is that they're working on. Other council members may decide to attend those meetings. So I believe that they are all being publicly noticed as potential quorums of the council, since we're all very much interested in the affordable housing issue. As I keep bringing it back to every planning commission meeting, is we're doing this or whatever it is that we're working on. So those are the 2 items that I wanted the planning commission to be aware of, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Councilmember Johnson? All right, well, I actually think that Councilmember Watton is well suited to start that effort, having heard him talk on the Economic Development Commission a few times. So
Definitely.
on that issue. So
Thank you.
good. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Anything else from your end? Seeing none. Let's move on to.
No, that's it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's move on to DRB 22-0009 Gear Automotive. Proposed action is to approve DRB 22-009 Gear Automotive with conditions as recommended by staff.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm Dinah Reed. I'm senior planner with the city of Snoqualmie. And so I want to share my screen first. I'm here to have you talk about the review of DRB 22-0009 Gear Automotive. I wanted to start with the location. Everybody can see that, yeah. So it's at this kind of prominent intersection of Meadowbrook Way and 202. This is the milk barn, and this blue building here is the current location of Gear Automotive. And their proposal is to use this existing building, which used to be Snow Falls Credit Union, and to redesign it to put it into this building. I'm sure you're all familiar with this intersection. So let me stop sharing that for now. I have a very brief PowerPoint. I thought it would help to have some visuals. Let's see. So I'm not going to go over the entire staff report. You have any questions, please ask questions. I'm just going to give you some highlights. The proposal is to change the use of the Snow Falls Credit Union. It's located at 9025 Meadowbrook Way Southeast to a vehicle service and repair shop. That particular use is permitted within the business general zoning district. The site is not within the historic district. Some of the basic changes will be the removal of the front vestibule, removal of 9 parking spaces in the front, and adding 5 paneled service bay doors. A new storefront and waiting area will be built in the west corner where there used to be the drive-through for the credit union. There are no changes to the existing landscaping. The site plan shows that it will retain approximately 25 parking spaces with also with ADA spaces. And with this proposal, they're not proposing new signage that will be applied for under a separate review. This is what the building looks like presently. This, oh, it's not sharing. I'm sorry. Why isn't it sharing? Hold on one second. Sorry about that. There we go. So let me just skip down. This is the what the building looks like right now. This vestibule here with my cursor, that's what will be removed. And this is a site plan showing the removal of this vestibule, and then the 9 parking spaces that are in front of it will also be removed. And on the west side, this is where the storefront waiting room will be. And the 2 ADA parking will be on this side as well. This shows, I move this down here, might be able to see it better. You can't really read this fine print, but as far as the color scheme goes, they're planning to keep it mostly grays and shades of grays and blacks. And they want to use accent color. They stated they wanted to use the green color from the logo, which is shown here in the bottom corner. I don't think that the plan is to have quite as bright a color on these bay doors as is showing in this drawing, but I'll let the applicant speak to that. And finally, this is just the overall site plan showing down in the bottom corner here, all of the existing parking spaces. Do you have any questions for me?
I'm just digesting 5 bays to work on. I think they have two currently.
Three currently.
Three,
Three.
yes.
No, three.
Across the street, you have 3 bays.
Okay.
So this is the proposal.
Are they vacating their other premises?
Yes,
Are they selling it?
they're renting currently.
I
So they're
couldn't hear
currently
that.
renting. And they're planning to vacate their existing property.
Okay. Okay. Anything else to present?
No, I don't have anything else unless you would like to see full design plans, or I can share those. This isn't all the design plans. Would you like to see more
Sure.
of them?
Well, tell you what, let me do a poll of the commissioners. I've got a couple questions, but let me do a poll of commissioners and see. Commissioner Smith, any questions?
Don't think so just yet, no.
Okay. Commissioner Goodman?
Can you give us a reminder of the scope of our review here? I don't think it's obviously not in the historical district. Can you remind us, what we should be looking for specifically?
Well, essentially, the design review guidelines go over. Let's see. Under scope of authority, the design review board shall review proposed development plans for the following described land uses. Land use actions, all proposed developments excluding single family homes. So this is a commercial business, so it's not excluded. And it's development. They're going to change the front of it. So it includes being reviewed by the design review board. Some of it, I can go over the staff report a little bit more. You need to review it in relationship of the structure to the site. The site should be planned to accomplish a desirable transition with the streetscape and to provide for adequate landscaping and pedestrian movement. So the landscaping was put in place with the original Snow Falls Credit Union, and it meets the perimeter landscaping of trees and shrubs and blocking views from, there's a single family residence to the north, and so there's a very significant tree coverage between the commercial property and the single family residence to the north. And they propose to just keep the landscaping that's on the property. Parking and service areas should be located, designed and screened to moderate the visual impact of large paved areas. So the existing parking lot has 41 spaces. They are removing 9 in the front where the bays will be. And the use only requires 14 parking spaces. So by keeping approximately 25 of the parking spaces, they comply with that standard. The height and scale of each building should be considered in relation to its site. Well, the building height and scale, it won't change with this proposal. In fact, it will become slightly smaller because they'll be removing the vestibule in the front. And then it's also to be reviewed relationship of the structure and site to adjoining areas. So harmony in texture, lines and masses is encouraged. This building is wood frame. It was built in 1993, has a gable roof. It fits in with the structures that are to the north, such as the single family residence, and the Jiffy Lube to the west is also kind of a gable roofed wood structure. The milk barn across the intersection is a wood frame building. So essentially they're keeping the style of the architectural style of the building as is. It will continue to have the gable roofs. It will continue to be wood frame. They're simply adding these bays across the front, and those garage doors are paneled, which are kind of in keeping with a more, aesthetic appearance than if they were just plain garage doors.
I guess my question is more, are we looking solely at the changes being proposed and not the whole building? Or I'm assuming we're not gonna design review the whole building from scratch, but we're just focusing on the changes proposed.
Oh, you're focusing on the changes proposed.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. There aren't that many changes being proposed, except for the facade with the bay windows. Or the bay doors, I mean, and it'll be painted a different color. And then the drive-through that served the credit union will be removed and replaced with a storage or a storefront waiting room. Okay,
So we're not.
okay. I don't know. Did you hear that? The
I
drive.
couldn't hear it.
Okay. The drive-through is being replaced with the ADA parking spaces.
Thank you.
It's not requiring a drainage permit because it's not, it's disrupting less than 2,000 square feet. I think it was 2,000 square feet. And so it doesn't require a stormwater drainage permit or drainage plan. And it's not required to have a SEPA checklist. Under SEPA regs, it's a exemption to the SEPA threshold. Do you have any other questions?
Any questions from Commissioner Lambert?
You said there were staff recommendations. Do you have those?
We have the conditions. The applicant shall obtain a building permit prior to construction. The applicant shall submit proposed lighting designs to the community development director for approval prior to construction. Excuse me. And number 3, signage requires a separate permit. So those are the 3 conditions.
Any other question, Commissioner Lambert?
No, I would like to see the full drawings, not necessarily at the meeting. Can you just make those available?
And I'm pretty sure they're included in the packet, but I can.
I think so too. Let me look here.
I'll find them. Sorry, didn't mean to ask something that's already included.
That's all right. I was just gonna
There.
pull them up real quick if I had them up here. I know that they're included in the packet.
Yeah, they are. I just found it, Commissioner Lambert. Yeah, the whole checklist and drawings are there. What happened
Okay.
there? So it is, are you saying Donna Reed? Did I say it right?
Dinah Reed.
Dinah. Donna, since asked, why don't you go ahead and show the drawings on a share screen? Just
Okay,
so you can cover those.
hold on one second. Let me get to them. Thought I had them. Oh, here they are. Okay. So, oops. Sorry, I'm. Okay, there they are. Let me. I don't know if it's better to have this at the bottom or at the top. So let's start at the top here. I kind of cut and pasted some parts of them into the PowerPoint. But To make it smaller. There we go. So this is. Here where you can see the vestibule that exists. 9 parking spaces. This shows there will be a door added to the rear right here. And this shows the bays and the ADA parking and the waiting room over to the left. Let me know if I'm going too fast. And then I'm not really sure what that is. That's the roof, okay. And then here is the front. And the west side. And then this is the rear of the building. And the east side of the building. And this shows trusses. Any questions?
So any further questions from the commissioners? Yes, Vice Chair Tessman?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Chair. So one question, I know you said you outlined the color scheme, but I'm looking at their documents here and it says that basically they haven't settled on that for sure. If we give approval today, who's, will be doing so without firm, without a firm color scheme in place. Is that accurate?
Their note here, it does say Gear Auto has not definitively chosen the colors for the building. This is a representation as to a possible color scheme for the building incorporating the colors of their logo. Their logo is green, black and gray, medium gray body, darker gray trim, and green for the accents. So I guess my question, it appears as though they plan to paint the bay doors green.
That's like the most bright possibility there is. But they can do green trim with black doors or gray doors. I mean, yeah.
So that they just said that that was a possibility, but if the design review board feels that that's more than an accent, the code specifically says under D 17.80.040 D.4, paint and material colors shall be selected to coordinate the entire facade and to be compatible with adjacent buildings. Bright or brilliant colors shall be used only for accent. So if you feel that the doors are, would be more than an accent, that's something to consider. We can add a condition regarding the color scheme.
Yeah, I mostly just brought that up to point out, the potential that it could change, right? Unless we make this request. And I'm super happy you specifically highlighted the code because that was another question I had. And so really, I just raised that for the rest of the commission. I don't know how others feel about those accent colors. I know Jiffy Lube is, I'm not sure what the colors of their garage are, but you still have, reds and yellows, I think, in their signage at a minimum. But yeah, so just mostly throwing that out there as a consideration.
Yeah, okay. I have a feeling, like some other signage we talked about, that the green will not be quite so bright. But if it, if you'd like, Vice Chair Tessman, we could, I'll make the motion to approve, and then you could ask for the amendment that those are slightly more subdued color, and that would probably meet the concern.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the way to go, because I'm back on Google Earth looking at the street view,
Yeah.
and it's all the other colors around there are much more subdued than that.
Dude.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me go ahead and do that. And that'll allow us to move this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that we approve. I'll ask for a second. Then in the discussion, bring this up as a condition. Okay, so I formally move that we approve DRB 22-0009 Gear Automotive with the 3 conditions set up by staff. Applicant shall obtain a building permit prior to construction. Applicant shall submit proposed lighting designs to Community Development Director for approval prior to construction, and that the signage requires a separate permit. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, now open for discussion. So Vice Chair Tessman?
Yes, I would propose amending the approval conditions to require a final color scheme and one in line with the prevailing colors for the neighborhood, which would be, Pacific Northwest, natural, greens, browns, etc. I'm not sure what the verbiage needs to
Right.
be.
Yeah. And yeah. So
And for example, looking at Jiffy Lube, actually they do have a subdued sign. It's just almost a maroon and then a white. So there's actually no yellow or anything flashy.
Yeah.
okay, so you made the motion for that amendment. Can I get a second to that amendment?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Can I ask
Aye.
a quick question before we vote?
Absolutely.
Just from staff, is that a workable condition? Like, is that something enforceable, I guess?
I think so. I mean, you mentioned that you Northwest color scheme that includes green. You just want it to be a more subdued shade of green that blends in with the landscape more. Is that correct?
That would be my position. Yeah, I'm not sure if any other commissioners.
Well, no, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
You
Okay.
say that's an accent, and you've got a significant portion of that whole side of that green. I think that's more than an accent.
To be very powerful. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, you want to see the PowerPoint again?
No. I think we're good.
We're good.
So you,
So the request is, actually, Vice Chair Tessman, take another shot at on the amendment.
Sure. I'm just okay. I think let's see. Did you all hear me, or was I broken there?
I think you cut out.
I didn't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My request was I just want to make sure, one, we're adhering to it, and two, what we phrase is as close to the code as possible. Would you mind kind of reiterating what that section on accents was?
Sure. Paint and material colors shall be selected to coordinate the entire facade and to be compatible with adjacent buildings. Bright or brilliant colors shall be used only for accent.
Okay. Let me pose this question. Is the proper amendment here actually to have the general contractor, the owner, whatever, come back with a final color scheme that either staff, based off of what we're talking about here, or the commission can approve? Because otherwise, I mean, what do we say? Like, you can use forest green, but you can't use Seahawk green? Like, I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Avoiding bright neon colors.
Yeah, there's an intent here. The intent is, just like the code says, to adhere to the color palette of the surrounding neighborhood, even in accent colors. And in general to be in harmony with the Pacific Northwest color scheme. But there's some room for interpretation there. So I know that's not exactly the verbiage we need. So I guess my question is the correct amendment, rather than being prescriptive, to actually just say, hey, here's some feedback. Based off of this feedback, can you come back to us with your final color scheme? And then we'll give you the thumbs up or down. Does that make sense?
Yes, my name is Tim Buell. I'm representing Gear Auto, and we would be happy to submit.
Who's speaking? We can't hear him.
Oh, is that the owner or general contractor, their president in chambers?
Yes, yes. My name is Tim Buell. I'm representing Gear Auto. We're the general contractor on the project. And we would be completely happy to come back with a full color rendering, color palette, Pantone numbers selected, and we could do it in a much more muted tone. This bright green was kind of a shock and awe. Just wanted to see what your guys' test the waters to see if that was something that might be too much. And it looks like it is. So we'd be happy to change the rendering to better colors, after we get the approval here and we can get moving on the way. So obviously it'd be something that gets approved prior to final paint. But we're really anxious to get going on construction, especially with the impending weather that's coming in.
For sure. So then so obviously you've heard the conversation, and does that suit your ends then if we give that conditional approval with the stipulation that you bring it back and you understand our intent here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if the building permit gets released this week and we can keep rolling, then we'd be happy to come back and to your next session with another rendering. And we can keep doing this because we're going to be working on this thing for a few months. So we have a few months to get it dialed in.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Great. So the amendment would add a fourth condition that the final color scheme be more subdued and approved by the commission.
That's it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Can I get a second to that amendment?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then I'd recommend we approve DRB 22-009 Gear Automotive as amended with the conditions and the amendment. Conditions and the amendment. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that should get you on your way, and we'll get to take a look at the colors next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, good. Good. So you were doing a shock and awe on us. I don't know if that's a great idea, but
Oh, good.
but yeah, it's I guess yeah. So now let's move into the next agenda item, which is the Historic Design Review Procedures Code Amendment. And the action here is to continue the discussion.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Here, let me actually turn my camera on, I guess. Thank you, Chair. So you'll recall we had a discussion about this at your last meeting, and so there's the memo included, and the memo is largely identical to what you saw last time. And I went through and described it. What we have here tonight is actual proposed code language here, and what you will, and I guess it did not convert properly. I'm now seeing it. Thank you, Muni Code. Let me grab a different version that will actually make a little more sense.
Jason, I can bring that up if you'd like. I just have it. I happen to have it handy.
I can grab it here in a second. Where's the? Sorry, when Municode did a conversion of the Word document and failed to show the correct things. So what we have here is, so things that are underlined are additions, and things that are struck through are deletions. And so what you see here, the black text is the code that exists today. And then if we're striking something through, it's code language that we are deleting. If you see something underlined, so this word here, owner, would be an addition to the code. So, and I can walk you through. I'll try not to belabor any particular section too much and keep it a little higher level. But of course, I'm happy to talk about any language in particular. So this first part this is the code section
Jason, can I just interrupt? I sent you a breakdown if you want to use that table. It goes through each of the draft amendments.
Thanks. I think I'll be okay with this for the moment, and we can refer to that if needed here, maybe more for a summary toward the end. So what we have, this is the code section here that establishes the Historical Design Review Board, and it mostly talks about the membership first of all, and then it has a few things that discuss how it could operate. So there's a couple of minor clarifications in the membership part. First, to clarify, we're talking about a property owner or a business owner, because it currently reads, one member shall be a property owner or business within the downtown and Red Book Historic District Overlay Zone, which is a bit odd grammatically. So we're just gonna that quick clarification. Take the word commercial out of the downtown landmark district. It is in fact the downtown landmark district and not the commercial landmark district. Some of these things are additional cleanups here. Remove the part about establishing its regular meeting date and time by resolution. We can do that administratively without need for the design review board, the historic design review board rather, to adopt a resolution. And then just say may hold special meetings, effectively as required. One thing we're deleting here, and I referred to this in the summary 2 weeks ago, is we're attempting to remove the Landmark and Heritage Commission from the historical design review process. And so that's why this section C here goes away. You don't see it reflected. This section D would get re-lettered to C, of course, if we did that. There are a couple other cleanup things in here that we would need to do. Apologies for that. And then here, it's a terminology change. This chapter of the code generally refers to the Historic Preservation Officer, which is in fact the Community Development Director. This is an effort simply to be consistent in that. There's a reference there to the director, and so we're just kind of aligning that with how the rest of this chapter is written. Moving on to this next section, I can pause for if there are any questions on that.
One question, Jason.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt your flow. So did you want to
Nope.
go through the whole doc, or did you want to
Nope.
like potentially entertain full discussion on the portions you briefed?
You should, if you have a question, I'm happy to entertain it now.
I just worry that when we look at paragraph B, the Historical Design Review Board shall oh no, maybe that wasn't it. Hold on. The board, yeah. So that sentence, the board shall meet not less than once a month. I just I know in your mind it probably coincides with the Planning Commission, but I know, for example, when we don't have agenda items, we don't meet or whatever. So I just worry, should that not be a may? Or excuse me, should the board meet not less than once a month?
Yeah, and I'll admit that's a tricky one, because we're attempting to do a couple things with language like this that don't, as you're identifying, don't always work out well. First is we are trying to establish a, if you will, an expectation on board members or commissioners on how often they should expect to meet. So for example, this commission meets, the Planning Commission meets twice a month. And so when we recruit for planning commissioners, we put that expectation out there, say, hey, look, it's twice a month, potentially. Versus for example, the Parks and Events Commission meets once a month. And so I think part of it is that. There is also an effort to ensure that the board meets often enough such that if somebody were to apply for historic design review because they're trying to do a project, that they can get a reasonably timely review by the board. if it's, the middle of the summer, everybody's on vacation, because we don't say, oh, you need to be available at least once a month. And, maybe they're stuck waiting 60 days for a review, which is not a good approach. All that said, I think we can find a way to adjust this language, would be my guess, and see if we can get a better look at it to like, as you say, take away the shall. So let me make a note of that here, and we'll we'll see what we can do.
And those are all great points. I just had in my mind that, I mean, shoot, I've been on the commission since January, and, truly historical design review board items, I think, going off my memory, we've had twice or whatever. So the shall makes me think like we won't necessarily have an agenda, but I see what you're saying. You're trying to carve out that time. Worst comes to worst, the design review board meets and adjourns. But at least like we've got that mechanism in place for, frankly, good customer service, right? So I get that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, like I said, we'll definitely take a look at it.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep. All right, if there's no other questions, I'll roll right on here. There's a place where, again, I'll apologize for a couple of typos. There was an earlier draft of this where we were going to attempt to expand the number of types of historic design review from the current 3 up to 4. Somehow that didn't get reverted, because we are in fact not proposing that particular change anymore. What we are doing here is really shuffling around what types of projects are subject to what level of review. So broadly speaking, there are 3 types of historic design review. There's type 1, which is generally lower level, more straightforward things, which are decided by the historic preservation officer, meaning the director. There's type 2 projects, which are a little more significant. Maybe you're doing an addition, maybe you're doing a major remodel. Those types of projects are subject to board review and approval. And then we have the type 3 projects, which are the really intensive one. And these ones really only involve contributing buildings, landmarks, things like that. And if you're making major adjustments or demolishing them. And these are in a separate category because these type 3 projects bring with them some additional criteria that the board needs to review. So what we're looking at here is an effort to create some efficiencies and shift around, well, a couple of things. We're looking to create some efficiencies, first of all, in how the board operates, how staff can review some types of projects. We are looking to provide a little more guidance and clean up some little, odd things that are in the code right now. And then also provide a little more clarity as to, well, how do these types of projects line up with the city's permit categories? So to really focus in on, what's the practical effect here? We're looking at these type 1 projects. These are things that would go through effectively an administrative historic design review. That would be a decision by the director. Staff would review it and be able to issue a decision on that without having to bring it to the board. We're looking at, routine maintenance for non-contributing buildings, painting them using the approved colors, and we've seen that approved color palette before. Temporary signs that, not more than 60 days. So this is a new one. This is something that comes in that is, it's effectively this one. We just kind of played with it. It's the routine maintenance of contributing buildings that are using the same materials and design as on the building before 1940, using approved colors. This distinction is important here because if they're going to use different materials or design, then it moves to a different level of review. We're looking at additions to, again, non-contributing buildings or structures. So those are the ones that aren't contributing to the landmark district. And then we're also adding all permanent signs in here. The board reviews quite a few signs, and that engenders a certain level of inefficiencies for applicants. And staff has significant experience looking at signs and applying the code to this. So what we're looking to do is to achieve some efficiency here by trying to move sign review through the process a little bit quicker and to take some some of the load off the, in this case, the planning commission, because the commission is going to have a pretty heavy workload, especially over the next 2 years. And we hope continuing after that, with the comp plan update, and then, some other things that will come up. So spending commission time on signage isn't necessarily the ideal approach when the commission's time may be better spent on looking at the actual buildings, because ultimately we're going to look at the signs against what the code says and make sure it matches up to the building. For type 2 projects, there's not a lot of change here. So we're looking at contributing buildings. If you're doing any alteration that uses non-historic materials, this is how the code reads today. We have a catch-all here for the non-contributing buildings. Anything that doesn't fall under this type 1 is by default a type 2. So it's an effort to say, well, if we're not sure where it falls or it doesn't seem to fall under there, we're going to call it a type 2 by default, and the board can look at it. We're looking at demolitions. This is a new one because it's a little unclear how demolitions of non-contributing buildings would be reviewed today. Additions to contributing building or structures are going to be a board review. And then, of course, all new construction would remain a board review. And then under type 3, these are the ones that are going to involve contributing buildings, landmarks. You can see, and we really just took the language that exists today and kind of just stretched it out a bit to be able to be a little more clear, because right now it's just one giant run-on sentence, which is a little unclear. So, demolition or removal of a contributing building or structure. Demolition or removal of a significant feature of a contributing building or structure. So if you want to take, hypothetically, not that they would ever do this, but if they want to take the turret off of the depot, that would be a type 3 review. And it also involved the landmark commission because that's a historic building. Like I said, they would never do that, but as an example. Excavation of a designated landmark site, and then of course, test boring, clearing, or grade activity on an archaeological site. This does not come up very often. And so I can't recall the last time we had a type 3 review come through. I think they would continue to be very rare. As I said before, the point of the type 3 projects is that there are additional criteria, and I'll show it to you in a second. I'll pause there to see if there's any questions, because that was a lot I just threw at you. Okay. This is the section that describes exactly how these different types work. So this previous section is, well, what kind of development projects fall under which types? This next section we're going to 1735-150 is more the details of how it works. So this one, type 1 projects shall be reviewed by the preservation officer. We made a cleanup here about, how, so there's an option in the code today where the historic preservation officer may refer a project to the board for their review and determination. We have done this on occasion where we say, hey, look, yeah, we think this is a type 1, but we want the board to look at it because it's a prominent building, say, even if it's a non-contributing building. So we want to keep that flexibility. That's where we're doing some of this cleanup here. Functionally, when we're doing complete applications, it is really a determination of a complete application, not the receipt of a complete application. So we don't want to limit ourselves to 15 days after we receive it, because under other sections of the code, we have 28 days to do that completeness determination in the first place. So while we're not interested in necessarily dragging review times out, we do need to provide the director with an appropriate amount of time to do a completeness review. And we try not to have them take the full 28 days. We try to do it much quicker because they're going to give us a package and we're going to say, look, you either have the things you need or you don't, and we can do that pretty quickly. And then of course, there's the scheduling issue of, well, once we make the determination, when's the next meeting? Usually the timing works out, we can get it to a meeting, but we want to just add that little bit of flexibility. We did want to make clear that the decision to refer a project to the board is solely the historic preservation officers. There's nobody else gets to, come in and say, oh, I think you should do that or not do that. It's like, no, if they think it needs to go, then that's what happens. Finally, what we're adding here is a clarification that type 1 projects are considered category 1 or 2 permits per a different section of the code, which is in Title 14. That's the section that talks about the categories of, who's the decision maker? Is there a notice of application? Is there, where would you appeal things to? This is something that came out of the Rails review, where that distinction was not clear. We had long been doing that interpretation of what category it falls under by essentially a case-by-case basis. Here we're trying to clean that up and get a specific referral in the code so that it is more clear going forward. This next section talks about who reviews type 2 and 3 permit projects, and so it says it's reviewed by the historic preservation officer, and then it says that person shall make a report and recommendation to the design review board. The design review board is the decision maker here. A couple of changes we've made is we've removed this clause about informing the King County Office of Cultural Resources, because as we've had this discussion before, this code has been in effect for over 20 years, and as near as I can tell, not once has this ever occurred, even though the code says it should. So yes, that is an oversight, and that should be done. However, we've also sat down and thought to ourselves, what are we trying to get from this? What will the King County Office of Cultural Resources give us informationally that we might need on, say, a temporary sign? Well, not a temporary, say a building addition. So we've removed the,
I
yes.
just wanted to add in that we've searched for the King County Office of Cultural Resources and have not located that office.
Yeah, that's another problem. We have left in the option that the board so the historic preservation officer can request the assistance of the King County Historic Preservation Program staff, and that office does exist.
Yes.
We also left in that the board may request the same. We deleted there is a limiter in the current thing that says, with respect to any proposed project that is not located within a landmark district. We've taken that out so that the board essentially has full discretion. If you want to ask King County Historic Preservation staff, then the board can request that. Because there are certainly projects where that may in fact be useful. But we're shifting this, as you note here, the word may, we're deleting the word shall. Again, this is partly in response to the fact that we've never done it, but also in response to some issues that arose from the Rails, where it was suggested that staff should have done that, did not do so. And that in and of itself was reason to, per the appeals that were filed, to require the board to reconsider their decision and have that notification take place. So we're cleaning that up. This one here, again, we're changing it from receipt of complete application to determination of complete application. And then adding this type 3 project shall be considered category 4 permits under Title 14. Again, that's specifying, you need a notice of application, neighbor notice. The planning commission is going to make the decision. It's appealable to the city council. Pause there again. Okay, this next section is a bit of a weird one, because in a section that's talking about the types of historical design review, now we have something talking about variances from the requirements. Rather than break this out into its own thing, we opted to leave it here just for ease of making the amendments. I don't recall that anybody's ever requested an amendment to the provisions of the historic chapter before. Not that, and it could certainly happen in the future. We did add a clarification here, and this is based on a state law provision that requires you to consolidate decision-making at the highest decision maker. And so this is saying, look, if somebody applies for a type 1 project and then requests a variance, the board, because the board has to decide the variance, we're going to consolidate the entire review at the board. We're not going to bifurcate this to say, well, the board gets to decide just the variance and nothing else. That doesn't work. The board can't consider a variance in isolation. So it's a clarification. State law would largely require it anyway. We're just making it abundantly clear. none of the variance criteria here, these 1, 2, 3, are being changed. So there's no change to the requirements for, or the review criteria for variance.
So if we could pause just a moment.
Yeah.
So I've been on the commission for a while, but I know Commissioner Smith is our journeyman or veteran. Have you ever seen a variance to a historic design review proposal?
Not that I can recall. Yeah, I think it seems like it would be pretty rare.
Yeah. And how many years have you been here?
Oh, gosh. 12?
Yeah, I just thought that'd be worth hearing. It's extremely rare. Extremely
Yeah.
rare. Okay.
Yeah, and largely the variance is there as a bit of a safety valve, because one thing, especially when it comes to historic design review, is that there may be a situation. I think the most likely situation that the board may see a variance request for would be involving or effectively a landmark building, where in an effort to do something to a landmarked structure, they would need to depart from what the criteria in this chapter might otherwise require. And to do that, it would be keeping in the historic and landmark nature of the building, even if it's somewhat against this. That is the most likely scenario for a variance here, that we're trying to do one specific thing with the code, but a specific building may have significance that would work against that. So maybe we'll see it one day, maybe not. And then you see this one here that, maybe they need to do something to meet ADA or barrier-free regulations. That's also a decent possibility along the way. For example, just adding an accessible ramp where one does not exist with a historic building may, and the design regulations may work against that. So it's another place where maybe that would be helpful. This next section, subsection D, this is talking about type 3 projects, and this is where these extra provisions related to contributing building and landmark buildings come into play. And these is really the criteria that you have to consider for these. It's a much higher standard, if you will. We're not changing that. One thing we are changing is making it so that the Historic Design Review Board, instead of the Landmarks and Heritage Commission, will be the one doing that review. As I had mentioned before, the Landmarks and Heritage Commission isn't so much a land use body. It's really the King County Landmarks and Heritage Commission with the Snoqualmie member. It is difficult for us to coordinate and integrate them into our permitting process compared to the Planning Commission. And so while we need to maintain that commission for the purposes of landmark designations, the board being composed of Snoqualmie citizens, business owners, et cetera, is in a better position to do the land use review. You've also been trained on it. And so that's really where that change is coming into play. This next one is talking about how the board renders, and the historic preservation officer for that matter, renders decisions. And this exists today. They have to be in writing. So have a staff board. You need findings, conclusions, a decision, including any conditions. This one is just cleaning up. We don't often mail things as much anymore. Email is often sufficient. We still provide a copy to the owner and the applicant. Again, delete by ordinary mail to each person. Oftentimes we will mail things, but a lot of people just want it on email, and US mail doesn't doesn't reach them very quickly. All right. Next one, there's a section on reconsideration. This is always a tricky subject. There are provisions with hearings examiners, for example, and courts of law, where one of the parties in front of that body could petition for reconsideration if they think a finding was erroneous, for example. You can't just file for reconsideration because you disagree with the decision. You have to state some basis. We just deleted this delivery. This is a cleanup thing. You have 14 days to do it because in this modern age of email and Zoom and everything, people know, and they should be able to get a request for reconsideration a little more quickly. Appeal. So this is where a number of changes start happening. So right now, today, under the current code, type 1 projects are appealable to the Historic Design Review Board, or meaning the Planning Commission. We're aiming to change that to the hearing examiner for a couple of reasons. One, the hearing examiner is the body we try to use for land use appeals because they are a trained land use professional. They can handle the procedural things a little more easily than the Planning Commission. They are, and I'm not trying to say the Planning Commission is not objective, but the hearing examiner has to be objective. That's why we have them in the first place. So it's just trying to push more of these appeals over to that decision maker and away from the Planning Commission.
And
We're
Jason,
also, yes,
how many appeals have there been in the last, say, 4 years?
one, the Rails appeal, and that was of a type 2 project, not a type 1. So I don't consider this necessarily, I wouldn't think this is going to be used particularly often, but by a similar token, a few years ago, we changed the appeal authority for building permits from the so-called Building Board of Adjustment, which doesn't even exist, to the hearing examiner. Not because we had appeals of building permits, but because that's what the hearing examiner is there for. So that's a lot of the impetus behind that particular change. Some of the other changes you're seeing here is just cleanup of language. There's some specifics about how many days and when the board is to hear it. We're just adding in the references to both the appeals section of the code, chapter 1440, and also chapter 2.14 is the where the hearing examiner is established and where a lot of things are specified about how the examiner operates. I will say the examiner has 90 days to resolve appeals per this section of the code, so you can see how long it might take. That is a little bit lengthier than the current provision where it says the board has to render the decision at a regular meeting more than 14 days after the date of filing of the appeal without a particular end date. So this is both putting a cap on it, but also functionally probably lengthening the time a little bit. The board could in theory render a decision very quickly the way this code is written, but could also in theory take literally forever because there is not an end date specified. This one here is deleted. This section specifies that decisions of the Historic Design Review Board on projects that are within the landmark district are appealable to the Landmarks and Heritage Commission. We're just getting rid of this entirely in favor of a modification to this current subsection C, which we will expand to say any decision of the board for a type 2 or 3 project is appealable to the City Council. This would happen with the Rails project. That would continue. We do some cleanup here of the language about how long these appeals can take. And so, right now you have to file the appeal within 21 days after the decision. We're just going to say whatever chapter 1440 says. Currently it says the City Council has to hear the appeal within 45 days and then render a decision within 70 days. We're just going to say, look, the council has to render its decision within 60 days, period. So they'll have to hear it and decide within that 60 days. It gives the council a little bit more scheduling flexibility to an extent. Now, yeah, they have 10 fewer days, but in this case, trying to be consistent with the rest of the code is, eases a lot of things. If we think 60 days isn't enough, we can just go in and amend that particular section of the code instead of having different time periods for different types of things. We also, so this section which says you have to file appeals with the city clerk, we're just getting rid of that because it's, as I note here, you don't need that anymore because adding the reference to chapter 1440 takes care of it. It specifies you file it with, here, actually, I'll show you what it says so you can see for yourself. What is the code here? 1440, new share, this one. All right, where is it? Okay, well, oh, I know why, because I think I fixed that. I think I fixed that down low or down lower. Anyway, actually, I'm just realizing I may have overlooked that I need to fix it because 1440 doesn't say so. I thought there was a, I apologize, I thought there was a section that specifies who you need to file it with, but apparently that's not the case, so I will fix that. What I will do is I will add it here to this section. So again, my apologies. Moving on, 1440.010, time limit for appeals. This says how long you have to appeal things. So the date for, so it says, you have 14 days, for example, for most of these. And then it also says you have to file it by 5 p.m. Again, something we ran into with the Rails appeal is it didn't say what time. And so the city clerk was sitting there saying, well, what's the deadline? We said, well, it doesn't say. So technically it's midnight. I mean, you could argue close of business or midnight. We ended up on midnight to try to be as liberal as possible with that. I will add in here who receives the appeal. In this case, it will be the Community Development Department. To make that a little more clear. The clerk is not well set up to handle these. I mean, the clerk can certainly do it, but functionally, because these are land use permits, they should come through the Community Development Department. And then the reason this language gets deleted, that says the notice of appeal shall set forth the factual and legal basis for appeal. Again, that's, as it turns out, somewhat vague. And so what we're doing instead is we're deleting it there, adding the time limit, the 5 p.m. We're moving that, effectively we're moving it here to this new subsection E. This is a reference to the hearing examiner section of the code, which specifies at a higher level of detail what you need to do for appeals. And so that reads, let me grab it here, to 14. So you can see there's actually a list, and this is similar to a list we might have for a permit application. So it says the notice of appeal shall include a copy of, or identify what's being appealed. If it's a proper, if it's something site specific, well, what is the property? They have to identify the standing and legal interest. What's the relationship to this? Are they the neighbor? Are they just an interested citizen from 2 miles away? Identify the alleged errors in the decision. You can't just say, I'm appealing this because I feel like it. You need to say, what did they get wrong? And then I'd say, what exactly did they get wrong and why should this be reversed? You have to identify the harm suffered. It's going to block all my sunlight, for example, might be the harm suffered, or it's going to add all this traffic and they didn't analyze the traffic, might be a basis, for example. And then say, well, what's the relief? Do you want to remand it to the board for further review? Do you want to deny the permit? What are you looking for here? There is a section here in the hearing examiner about reasons for dismissal. Why the examiner could, in this case, the hearing examiner, but it could also be the city council, could dismiss something. So one, if the appellant lacks standing, meaning they don't have and this is a legal term here, and we don't have the city attorney here to discuss it. If you have further questions about, we could probably get some clarification. But if they lack standing, which is to say, they're not, they're effectively not going to be harmed. Like if I, who doesn't live in Snoqualmie, try to appeal a Snoqualmie land use permit, I probably don't have standing to do so because I live 25 miles away. You know, second one, if the grounds stated do not constitute a legally adequate basis for the appeal, so it's basically if you didn't state an actual reason for the appeal. And then saying if it's untimely, meaning they filed it too late, it's frivolous. Again, they didn't state a reason, they just said, I don't like it. Or another one, if it's beyond their jurisdiction. That's again a legal, legal terminology there, that if, the examiner only has a certain amount of, if you will, jurisdiction. If somebody appeals something and says, hypothetically for historic design review, you're approving something that's 50 feet tall and you can't do that. Well, the examiner doesn't actually have jurisdiction to review that because that's not a decision made by the board. That's something made by staff. So that's it's an extreme example, admittedly, but it is an example of something that may be beyond the examiner's jurisdiction. So that was an awful lot of words on my part to describe all this. I'm going to now grab, Emily was kind enough, as you heard her mention earlier, to make this chart, which kind of summarizes a lot of this. And so these are all the code sections that are being modified over here on the left, and it says, well, what's the code say? And then we're modifying this. Is it a clarification? Is it a simplification, or is it an enhancement of what's going on here? So, for example, adding a language for additional minor projects is an enhancement because we're trying to move some things into administrative design review, streamline the process a bit, takes a little bit of load off the planning commission. We consider that an enhancement. Language determining about referrals to the board. That's both a clarification, but also an enhancement of we're trying to add some additional, ability for the board, for the historic preservation officer to refer things to the board at their sole discretion, like, hey, I think this needs to go. That's an enhancement, but just clarifying that you can do this is a clarification. So I am happy to take questions. Like I said, I know that's an awful lot of things I just threw at you, and code language is extremely technical and could be hard to follow. I will also send out a different copy of the proposed amendments in a format you can actually follow, because unfortunately the version that got uploaded to Municode to our agenda management software doesn't actually show that. So I apologize. I call it a lesson learned on that one.
Well, thank you, Jason. Do any commissioners have any questions? Comments?
One comment I'm thinking of, and
yeah,
I think it's probably good just for staff to keep in mind, should the question come up from the public at all, not that I would feel this way, but the move to give more and more decision-making to the hearings examiner would seem to me, as a taxpayer, putting my taxpayer hat on, right, that's going to cost me more because these decisions are being made by somebody the city has to pay versus a volunteer body. So I think it's probably just something, to have, like you said, there's only been one this year for a type 3, but should that question arise, I think it's good to kind of be having a historical look back of how often this comes up, and what are kind of potential cost implications to the city, however small they may be.
Sure. Yeah, it's a valid point here, because there are certainly cost differences. Certainly, looking at the design review board item you saw tonight, Dinah's time isn't, Dinah works for the city. Her time isn't, free per se, but you're also already paying for it. So certainly we do try to keep that in mind. And that's one of the reasons why you see the hearing examiner as an appeal body, and not certainly as just the decision maker, the first decision maker here, because you're right, that might be it would be excessive for most of these. And so we do keep that in mind. I will certainly look back. Like I said, we're certainly aware of the one appeal of the rails that happened earlier this year. Of course, that appeal went to the council. I can't think of any others that have occurred, certainly in my time here, but that doesn't go back as far as your time on the commission, Commissioner Smith. So,
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner Smith?
No, not right now. I think, this, I digest a bit more, but I think good to see some, it's funny just looking through some of the, the mistakes and the, just discrepancies, things like that, that have been in the code for so long.
Yeah, agreed.
I would just like to remind the commission that this would require a public hearing. And we'd also have to provide a 60-day notice to the Department of Commerce moving forward. So, just kind of looking at the calendar, 60 days puts us into like the December timeframe before we could get anything to council.
Okay.
yeah. So, and thanks, Emily, for adding that. Looking ahead, and I had mentioned this last time, there's also the site plan review code amendment that we're still working on, and we had hoped to have it tonight, don't have it. We should bring it to your next meeting, but we would ideally like those two to move in parallel together through a public hearing and then on up to the council once the commission makes a recommendation. And so, because of that, so the commission's next meeting is on Monday, November 7th, and then of course Monday the 21st. The 21st is the one right before Thanksgiving, which is a tricky, and then of course we're into the December. And so there are some interesting schedule considerations coming up as we move into the holidays. We don't need to set a public hearing right now. We can talk about that at the next meeting. We're certainly mindful of wanting to have a meaningful public hearing and not a pro forma one, recognizing that the holidays are busy, people are out of town, but also there are opportunities for comment. Email exists. It is easier to join these meetings with Zoom, of course. So it's a worthwhile discussion for the commission to have going forward of when to schedule a public hearing to really make it useful, and we can be prepared to have that one at your next meeting.
Yeah, just looking at the calendar, perhaps we could consider the 21st. That would be the second meeting for the Planning Commission, or the 5th of December.
So what's the day notice for the public hearing?
We don't have one yet. We're still mapping that out.
But what's the requirement?
We have a 60-day notice to provide to the Department of Commerce. So I'm just keeping that in mind.
So the couple timeframes involved here. For the public hearing, we have to provide a minimum of 10 days notice for the hearing, publish it in the paper, post on the city website, things like that. As Emily was saying, we have to provide notice to the Department of Commerce, the State Department of Commerce, a minimum of 60 days prior to adoption of any changes to our land use code. That takes us into from right now, of course, that'll take us into mid-December. As you're hearing in the discussion about a public hearing, that's not, at this point, that's not likely to affect the potential adoption date, the date the council could take action, because we're likely to be into January or February for that anyway, simply because of scheduling. So those are some of the things that we consider. We also need to look into doing SEPA review on this, whether it's exempt or whether we need to do a DNS or something. We haven't done that yet, and so that's something else we need to look at. SEPA determinations, if we if we have to actually issue one, also require a certain amount of notice as well. So these are all things that we work on a little bit behind the scenes, but we do keep it in mind as we work through the schedule.
Well, I think, I agree that the 21st of November would be good for the public hearing, but it really is up to staff. I mean, so we've just gone over the historic design review. which are scheduled to be ready on November 7th for covering these corrections. There's just a few that we had today, and covering the other code amendment.
Sorry. Yeah, the 21st, I think, would be the ideal date, but we'll, again, I think it's worth the commission discussing that particular timing at your next meeting. I think you should all think about, does 3 days before Thanksgiving really work in your collective view, or would it?
Yeah, I mean, if not, then would be the next day here. Let me take a look.
December 5th would be the next meeting, and then as most of you probably recall, the city council will typically cancel all of the meetings for all the boards and commissions and council itself for the second half of December. So there would not be a second meeting in December.
Right. There's two aspects. It's one is scheduling, and the other is, are we going to have the other package ready to go? So let me parse that out. If we were, and let me just pull you guys. Commissioner Smith, would you be available November 21st for a meeting? Or is that problematic?
Yeah, no, I'm not traveling anywhere for Thanksgiving holiday.
So you'll be here? Okay. Commissioner Vice Chair Tessman?
I'll be here. I'm able to support.
Commissioner Goodman?
Most likely will be available, yeah.
Okay, and Commissioner Lambert?
Yeah, I'll be here.
Okay, so we could support it from a commission standpoint. So
Okay.
then the question is, can we get the next package ready for review on November 7th? That's really the question.
Yeah, and we should be able to do that. I mean, the good news is we have actually 3 weeks. There's a 5th Monday in October.
Right.
And so it buys us a little bit of extra time. So yeah, I think we should be able to get that to you, and we can look to a public hearing on the 21st potentially.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. Otherwise, it'll delay into the new year. And I just think it's wise if we could do it to not let it drag into the next year. Okay. Good. Good discussion. So there'll be some additional corrections. Ultimately, we'll have the public hearing on that combined, as you mentioned, and then we'll go ahead and make the recommendation for the council.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Next agenda item is short course follow-up, and I believe Commissioner Smith, you're the only one that hasn't seen it live. Did you happen to see it offline?
I have not yet. Sorry, I traveled to Toronto last week for playoffs, and then kid came home and got
Fair
COVID.
enough. So here's the question. Well, here's the question, and we need Commissioner Aliff in here as well on it. The short course really is for the planning commissioners to be on the same page. So it talks a lot about the GMA, right? It talks a lot about how the planning commission operates, and so anyway, there's a good value to do that. Would it make sense to carve out 15 minutes or 20 minutes and review sections of that short course in the planning commission itself? Would it make sense to do that? It'd be a refresher for those who've seen it, and it would again make sure we level set for those folks. So Commissioner Smith, what do you think?
It's not a bad idea. Yeah, we haven't done that in the past, but I think that you just like you said, and as Jason's alluded to, there's a lot coming up over the next couple of years. We've got to after quite a bit of turnover on the commission, kind of previous year, we have kind of a solid group that's been in place now for much of this past calendar year. I think just for the purpose of going forward, that could be helpful if staff thinks it's feasible.
Yeah, well, and we're really supposed to do this for the comp plan. And again, we've got a quorum that has gone through it, but I think all of us should go through it. So why don't we, if there's no disagreement, carve out 15 or 20 minutes. We'll figure out what works with the video to show. We'll put it at the end of the meeting. That way, if somebody is very familiar with it, like, perhaps Commissioner Goodman, whether is very familiar with it, it's not going to be that difficult, but nonetheless, we won't make it massively long. But at least if we do that over the next couple meetings, we'll all be level set with the right attendance. So, are we okay with that? Okay. Any objections? Okay. And then, yeah, okay. The last issue is economic development, PSRC training. Can you give us a little update on that, Emily?
Yeah, let me just bring up my little reminder window. So PSRC developed a series of what they call Passport to 2044. Some of the past sessions included such thing as the comp plan workshop series kickoff, a climate change, and then the most recent one was a September 7th, 2022 economic development series. So the chair and I talked about this particular part of their training and thought it might be something that the commissioners might be also interested in watching. And I'm sorry, I was going to bring up, share my screen and bring up the website, but I am not seeing how, I'm not seeing why it won't come up now.
What do you think? Would you be interested? Well, we can pass out a link and at the end of this, and it's actually, you may have already have seen some of it, but it's pretty interesting what we're going through. And again, this whole comp plan process has a lot of different elements. So though we're not directly in the economic recommendations to council, it certainly is on everybody's mind. And I thought it would be good to at least make sure that the planning commission is aware of what's, what training the economic development commission is going through.
Sure.
Emily, any luck with that screen share, or do we need to send a
Yeah,
link?
just 1 second. Let me ask Jimmy. Can you say why this screen share won't come up? Like here, I want to screen share this. Why won't it come up?
Okay, so let's go. Your Zoom session here. Your screen.
Oh, there it is right there. There it is right there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we were able to bring it up. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is the website. It's pretty easy to get to. If you go to psrc.org and then r-work/passport-2044. And you can see right here, there's some upcoming training sessions. One tomorrow on transportation, which would be a good one. There's a housing session part 1, but if you scroll down, you can see the past sessions that have happened. And that's where you find the economic development one. And admittedly, the economic development, the board commissioners will actually be updating the economic development element in cooperation with the planning commission. So there's some collaboration there.
So can we publish this link on as part of an agenda so that everybody has, can we send an email out just to make sure everybody has access to this? And I know that folks don't have a huge amount of time, but I think it'd be worthwhile making sure we have access to this.
Yes.
I mean, scroll to the top. The one thing that was interesting when I first joined the Plan Commission was almost every item, it was like, well, this was already decided, or this was part of the previous comp plan. This is one case we actually have an opportunity to participate in the going forward for the next 20 years. And I think it's important that within our purview that we're aware of what's happening and that we go to provide our input. And that's why I even emphasize the short course. Good.
Yeah, and the short course again is customized to the city of Snoqualmie. They do offer short courses that just appeal to large geographic areas, but this one was a unique training with a special emphasis on housing. And even a guest speaker, Joe Tovar, who spoke directly to commission members and helping them give tips and tricks on how to do, how to fulfill your roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's good that we figure out what the right timing is, relatively short bites of it that we put in the tail end of our planning commission, just to refresh everybody or to inform everybody who weren't able to attend. Okay.
Yeah, and on that note, I'll just mention that PSRC is coming to the city of Snoqualmie to do a presentation before the city council. And that is scheduled for the 14th of November.
Okay.
And that'll be a high level executive type presentation, but will be a nice way to understand how the local comprehensive plan fits into the regional plan 2050, and then how that regional plan, of course, fits into the statewide goals and Growth Management Act, which is part of the short course.
And you said November 14th, right?
Correct.
What time is that?
That's a 7 o'clock regular council meeting.
Okay.
So the presentation will be shortly after that.
Okay, so we could actually attend that in person if we wanted to.
Yeah, it'll be remote. Likely the presentation will actually probably be remote.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, the city hall will be open.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we're any questions or comments on that? Okay, so yeah, please send out that link, and let's move on to the next agenda item, which is items of planning commissioner interest. I will poll the folks online. And Vice Chair Tessman.
Nothing for me tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Nothing at the moment.
Commissioner Goodman.
Just that I didn't think this earlier, but the for code amendment discussions moving ahead, the table that Emily made was stuff like that I think is really helpful, particularly if it ends up being very complex, just kind of a bird's eye view of everything. So if it's possible to have something like that for, you know, future such discussions, that would be great for me anyway.
Yeah, no, good comment. Good comment.
Yeah.
I think for the public hearing, it would also be most essential for them to understand. Yeah, good comment.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. We'll definitely we'll make sure it's included and continue doing it for future ones as well.
Good. Commissioner Lambert, any items of planning commissioner interest?
Yeah, kind of curious about that little clothing store over by the Snoqualmie Brewery that we approved, I don't know, last year or something. Whatever happened, it's not open. So what happened to it?
Good question. I know they have certainly been under construction for a while with little recent activity. We'll follow up with the building official, John Cooper, and find out a status on that one. Because to be honest, I don't know.
Thanks.
Okay. And I do have a question. and I know I brought this up a couple times, but is there any change of ownership in the Woodman? And the reason I ask is pre-pandemic, I remember the previous council and mayor even, calling that the anchor of downtown, right next to the train station, the historic old saloon, and a lot of interesting events there. So I'm curious, is any change of ownership happening? Anything going to happen with the Woodman?
Nothing happening that we're aware of. What I will do is I'll see if Nicole Wiebe, because she has her ear to the ground a little more, if she has any update that she's heard of. The last update I had, of course, was that it was for sale, not just the building, but also the entire brand and menu and all those things that came with it. So, but that was a number of months ago.
Yeah, I think that was a loss, a real loss of a little piece of the character of Snoqualmie. It'd be nice if somebody picks that up and maintains that. So, okay, all right. That's all I have. Anything else? Okay, hearing nothing else, I move that we. Oh, I'm sorry. Upcoming schedule.
Yeah, so I'm showing here a new kind of what we're calling future agendas list. It's an Excel spreadsheet that would be included in your packets going forward. It is a bit of a work in progress, but the intent is to show you the progression of items once they're introduced into the Planning Commission and how they would flow throughout the year at various meetings. So you have color codings here indicating, discussion in that beige color, action in green, and then red bolded would be a public hearing. So currently for this upcoming November 7th meeting, we would like, just like we had previously talked about a few minutes ago, providing you the draft code amendments for the site plan, as well as, and actually this particular item, the housing needs analysis, would be moved to the 21st based on a recent discussion we just had today with our consultant team.
Okay. And then I'm not sure when, but Gear Auto would come back at some point, either at some point in the next couple of meetings.
Yes.
And we would want to show, and we have to kind of look at it, how to parse that in 15-20-minute segments, a piece of the short course on November 7th as well.
Yeah, correct. We would put that under training.
But so as we discussed then, we see you get the SPR amendment next meeting, and then we have the public hearing on the 21st of November. And it seems like from the quick poll we did, we should have a quorum on the 21st, so we can go ahead and do that. And then move on to the actual recommendation on December 5th. So we check mark that in 2022. Good.
Yeah.
I like the forward look of the calendar. Any comments? Okay. Okay, hearing none. Any additional thing to add, Emily, to the upcoming schedule?
No, not at this time.
Okay. With that said, I move that we adjourn the Planning Commission of October 17th.
So moved.
Take a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, all.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
All right.